My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
All right, guys, welcome back to Property Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kaminsky, filling in for Dave Dubois. And have you ever wondered how Canadians can navigate and thrive in the dynamic world of U.S. real estate investing? Tonight, my guest, Chad Carter from Beyond Borders Group. He's here to unravel the secrets, share insights, and guide us through the exciting realm of cross-border real estate. Chad, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Bryce. Thank you very much for having me on. Can't wait to kick this off and share what knowledge I have to you guys and your audience. And
so you're a Canadian then?
I am a Canadian, yes. Born and raised in Canada. My family, so my father's from Barbados, actually, and immigrated to Canada when he was about 4. And my mother's from Nova Scotia and has a long line, long heritage in Nova Scotia.
They go way back. They're one of the first,
exactly,
people to land here. Certainly not the first people here. Let's make
not the first people here.
First people here in Canada.
No, I won't say that.
Particular land today at the ceremony. No, we're not gonna get.
No. I won't say that. But yes, they've been here for a long time. And then both my parents, found each other in Toronto, and I was born in Toronto.
Yeah, wonderful Toronto, the center of the universe. So you're not actually in Toronto today. You're zooming in from
Syracuse, New York.
In one of your projects in one of the bedrooms, right?
Yes, I am actually in a bedroom right now that has no hardwood flooring in it. The paint just went on the walls. So
it's careful not to bump into it on your way out.
I know.
So why American real estate? Why not just invest in Canada like the rest of us?
I think it's just the numbers, to be honest.
That was a setup. I already knew that.
I know. You knew
the setup is because I've done I've been I worked in Ohio for a bit with another company. And even to this day, I get deals because I still have those emails. I still get deals and they're like $39,000 for a duplex. And then, if you were a Canadian, you might jump all over that. But me, as someone who had been on the ground, driven, I went to Google Maps and I went down the street and I was like, 139 East. Okay, decent address. It's east enough of 100. And I go down to Google Maps. I'm like, oh, there's that gas station I almost got jumped at. No, this isn't a deal. So there is some things that people are worried about investing out of reach. So how do you guys at Beyond Borders Group navigate that for Canadian real estate investors?
Yeah, we don't really touch any of those D areas or any of those war zones that they, that you were just talking about.
But how does the investor even know? Like, how would I even know, or how do you guys navigate that for someone like me? Let's say I'm in Winnipeg here, like I am, and I'm like, I want to invest in Syracuse, and I've got some money I'd like to invest. How does that work? Walk me through how I can feel like I'm avoiding that.
Well, first of all, we have our track record as far as where we already invest, right? So we try to stay within there. So right now we're in upstate New York, we're in Syracuse, Rochester, Grand Rapids. I have a place in Huntsville, Alabama. So a few different markets, but we use metrics to determine like, hey, this is a good area, population growth, income, all of that stuff, where businesses are moving to. So we basically put together kind of like a prospectus or like a pitch deck, and we say, here, this is what we're proposing. These are the type of properties that we have, whether it's off market, someone has sent them to us, we've already vetted it, we've underwritten it. I do a lot of the underwriting myself and I have a partner who helps me on that as well. We've already looked it over. These are the numbers. This is the area. Take a look on Google Maps, check it out. But we basically spoon feed you. We give you everything that you need to know about the property, what it's going to produce. And for the most part, most investors, as long as they know that they're going to get their return from their money, most of them aren't too concerned unless they're on title, they're on deed, and they got to look and see where that house is or where that property is. Like, I don't know, that looks a little sketchy. For the most part, if you tell them, hey, I'm going to get 10.5% on my money, and they're happy with that, they don't really care as much as far as what neighborhood it's in, things like that. But for us who are on title, who are responsible for the performance of the property, we have to make sure because I invest in all my deals so that I'm not going into those type of neighborhoods or those areas unless I know
Mhm.
that there's some type of gentrification happening or you know what I mean, right? So there's
It's
something on the
turning around.
exactly. Otherwise, absolutely not. So we don't try to reinvent the wheel. We're not going into areas where there's no development, there's no change. We're going into, not A class, but we'll say C
You're
plus
not
B.
speculative, right?
No,
You're
not at all. It's not speculative.
conservative in that regard.
Exactly. We're very, very conservative with how we underwrite. And yeah, so when you were pitching it, it's pretty simple, it's pretty concise of how we package it. And usually an investor's like, huh, that looks good, we like it, and we go for it. Or hey, maybe I want to be a part of it, I want to see, and they go,
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, and that's the thing too, is that people need to kind of trust the people on the ground. That's the
yeah,
reason that you're
yeah,
in Syracuse
yeah,
today.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that you are driving down that street and it is 9, 10 p.m.
Yeah,
where you are. So
yeah, yeah,
I can recall some places where um because the wife at the time she was doing property management
yeah,
on some of these units,
yeah.
and it was like, no, you're not going to that house after 6 o'clock. You're not going
Oh, yeah,
into this block
yeah,
after six, because as soon as the sun went down, things changed
yeah.
completely. You go there in
And
the
I
daytime, blah blah blah, but no showings after six, for your own good. Like just not. So you do really have to get a sense and protect the investment. Now, granted, if that's the type of high yield cash flowing asset that you're
mhm,
looking for, maybe you do go into these fringe areas and
yeah, yeah,
battle the neighborhood for the cash in hand.
yeah,
But there's, I think if you're investing at an arm's length like that, and you want to be a Canadian investing in the United States, pick easier things.
yeah.
Stick to the road that's traveled. Don't try to
Exactly,
like, don't
exactly.
think you can beat the system. Like there's a reason that that property is 20 grand. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, we're not buying $20,000 properties. Now having said that, I have bought a property for $55,000. However, it was actually in a great neighborhood. We basically just bought a shack that was on land, and the land was in a good neighborhood, and we
mhm.
basically tore the house apart and rebuilt the whole house.
Yeah.
So you can, the purchase price doesn't matter as much, but still, once again, it's location, 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 right? If the location is good, the purchase price, that's it doesn't really matter so much. But yeah, in the US, you have to be a little bit careful. I mean, especially in some of these smaller markets, like every street is different, literally,
Yeah.
right?
Block to
Like every
block.
block is different. It's maybe a little bit different than most of our markets, in Canada, where, an area or a neighborhood is known versus in the US,
Yeah.
you can have a great street and you could literally walk around the block and then you're like,
And
wow,
it's a
it's
bad street. I
changed.
think it had to do
Exactly.
too, like what I did notice was that the lack of back lanes, because you can
Yes.
have backing, like
Yes.
two properties
Yes.
backing, but like this street is terrible, and this street
And the
has,
other one was
it's brand new paved, and all the houses are painted, and they have flowers. And then you go like a block over, and there's mattresses, and there's like it's just wild. And the back lane
yeah,
thing I think is one, but also the interstate. If you don't like in Canada, we have to drive through every neighborhood. Rarely
correct.
can you like skip a neighborhood. But with
Yes.
the interstate, you can be like, well, I'll just take the next exit,
And I'm
and
gonna go
I don't
around
have to
it.
see that. I don't have to see that. I can go up to the next road and come down whatever street it is. So it is definitely like, as a Canadian, if you haven't gone there, if you haven't experienced these nuances
Yeah.
that American real estate has,
Yeah.
it is a reason
Mhm.
why you should be careful, A, but B, why there can be so much profit to be found and cash flow to be found and equity to be found, because it is so nuanced in that a property right over here could be a great property, and a block over, it's just like a bad investment. So, um, how long have you guys been helping people, and what was like the big challenge when you got started, or did you
Yeah.
move into this company, or how did this whole thing start where you decided, oh, I'm going to start doing American stuff now?
Yeah, actually, the company is relatively new. We started the company itself to help Canadians. Basically, last year we launched it at the end of last year, so Q4 of last year we launched it.
Mm,
But as far as myself, I've been investing in the U.S. for about 5 years now. And how it started is I went to school in the U.S. in 2009 to 2013
yeah,
to be a chiropractor, and that was in upstate New York, just outside of Syracuse. So I still stay in the same areas. I know them very, very
yeah,
well. And I lived in a house with four other guys, big, huge house. We all paid like $400 or $500 a month in rent,
yeah,
so it's like bringing in 2,500. And then my father is a builder in Toronto. He does renovations and stuff like that. But we just went online and we were looking at the house that I was living in, and that house was like 90. It was sold previously for like 95 grand. So we
yeah.
did the math, and I said, wait a minute, this house was sold for
54%
95.
cap rate or something
Exact,
like that.
the
Yeah.
most ridiculous numbers you'll ever see. So we started thinking like, okay, well, I'm a broke student. I can't afford anything right now. But after I work for a few years, it's something that I'm going to keep in the back of my head. And if the opportunity presents itself, then we'll jump into that market. And that's kind of what happened. Waited a few
Go
years.
for it.
Yeah, we worked, and actually with a couple buddies of mine, I approached them on New Year's years ago, and I said, "Hey, it's New Year's. Let's think about something. You guys want to buy a property?" And they're like, "Sure. Where do you want to buy it?" And I said, "Well, we have two options. Well, we have a couple options, but we actually at first we put a down payment, or not down payment. We put an offer on a pre-construction. We put the paperwork in, letter of intent, whatever." And we ran the numbers after we did that, and we said, no, this is not going to work. So I said, okay, guys, plan B. And I like this idea. Hopefully, you guys do. Let's go to the US. And we ended up buying
Hmm.
property in the US for 86 grand. And it was a 4 bedroom, 2 bath home in actually a really good neighborhood, not too far from the school that I went to. So I knew it very, very well. We did miss the market for students because we thought we were going to put students in it, but we bought it in the summertime. We did a little reno to it, and then by the time we had it ready, we missed that September market. So we're like, oh shit, what do we do? Excuse my language. What do we
Yeah, we
do?
got to put someone else in there now.
Exactly. We did though. We found a family and they rented it for 4 years. We just swapped that tenant out now. And we have a new tenant who's on Section 8 there, and they pay like $1,500 a month. We bought it for
Yeah,
86
and
grand.
Section 8, that's another
Yeah.
thing that, because there's people have had bad experiences with
Yeah.
what you would call EIA in Canada,
Yeah.
because you can kind of get away with murder in regards to being a tenant on income assistance. But
Mhm.
people don't, what maybe people don't understand about Section 8 is you can lose your voucher if you mess
Yes, you
around.
can. Yes, you can.
So people are afraid. They're like, oh, a Section 8 tenant. Well, if they're a Section 8 tenant, they have to maintain their tenancy status. And
Yes.
that changes the
Again.
value of that person, because
Yeah.
some investors are all Section 8 because
Yeah.
they get paid directly. There's a lot of bonuses,
Every
but the
first and
main
first of
one
the year.
is that they must maintain the voucher. And so if you're unfamiliar as a Canadian and you're investing down there and someone says, "Oh, do you want like a what you would call I don't know, I'm just gonna a welfare tenant, right?" We call it
Yes.
welfare in Canada, we call it welfare in the United States, but it's not the same. And what could you speak a little bit more to that side of things? Because a
Yeah.
lot of people don't want an EIA tenant in Canada because
Yeah.
they're kind of off leash. They get to kind of run around and leave in the middle of the night, and they get the money paid to them, and then they don't end up paying it to the landlord, and it's a mess. So uh, tell us about your experience with Section 8 so far.
Yeah, Section 8 is, I think, is a better program than what we have back home. Um, I have a few tenants actually that are on Section 8. And as you said, one of the very first things is if you are on a Section 8 voucher program, you could lose that voucher. So if
Hmm.
you treat the property poorly, you damage it,
Yeah,
um, you you still on Section 8 have to pay a small, normally, not always, but you have to pay a small percentage of your rent. So if your rent's $1,000, the tenant might still have to pay $100 or $200 of that, depending on their income. But if they don't pay that part of it, they can lose their voucher.
yeah,
there's just different things, right? But on the other side of it too, as a landlord, the program is not that difficult to deal with. For a
Yeah.
Canadian, one of the things that they'll have to do is they'll have to get their tax
EIN
ITIN
number.
number. Yeah, exactly. ITIN number. So that way they have a tax number. So there's no withholding from the actual agency that they, that they're with. So if it's Syracuse or any other place,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
agencies, they need to get that. But in general, the program is really smooth. So on the first or the fifth of every month, you're getting money directly deposited into your account.
Yeah.
The only real obstacle with it, and it's not an obstacle, it's actually a good thing, is every year they come and they do a safety inspection. So they make sure that the
Yeah, you
place
have
is
to
up to
renew
date.
your Section 8.
You
Yeah.
have to renew it every single year. So it's actually not a terrible thing. The inspectors are usually not bad, and they'll go in, they'll make sure that your smoke detectors are working, your electrical outlets are good, like all of those things
Yeah.
that as a landlord, you should want to
Health
know,
and
okay,
safety, like bugs and stuff.
you
And it's
should
probably
want
for the best too. You don't want your building to burn down. You don't want it to be,
exactly.
you don't want it to become like a cockroach motel, because that's the one thing about, I will say, with American real estate, because
Yeah.
of the latitude, you do get more cockroaches. It's like as soon
Yeah.
as you get down below the 49th parallel, I
Yeah.
can tell some of the units I've seen, but manageable, but it's a thing.
Yes.
There's more
Yes.
intricacies. Like in Canada, I don't know what it is. I've only really seen it a few times. It's
Yeah.
maybe it's the weather, or maybe it's the way that we keep our buildings more airtight. But
Yeah.
you
They
know,
don't like
like
the
you don't
cold
need
weather.
tri-pane windows and stuff like that. It's like two-pane windows or single-pane windows. Like they don't care that much.
Yeah.
So um let's talk about the funding of these things, because
Mhm.
that's kind of like a,
Yeah.
you know, how does someone like a Canadian
Yeah.
invest in the United States? Because the first question is always like,
Mhm.
well, first of all, my dollar's worthless. Second
Mhm.
of all, so I'm gonna have to bring like 2 to 1 or 1.35 is the exchange as of the recording of this episode today. Um, how do I how do you help people with the transaction? How do you help people navigate that process? And yeah, let's just start there. How do you help people navigate that process?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with us first. So when we got started and we didn't know how to finance a property down there either.
Hmm.
So a lot of the information is really kind of scarce actually for Canadians on how
Yeah,
they can actually do it. And most Canadians that I actually speak to have don't even believe it's possible. The first question they ask me is like, "Hey, can I get financing? Can I even get a mortgage in the
yeah,
US?" And the answer is yes, you can.
yes,
Now, there's different ways to go about it. And when we're talking to our clients and we're trying to explain to them like, "Hey, if you want to get financing, there's different ways to go about it. The first part of it is kind of looking at your own personal situation. And
yeah.
if you're, let's say you have a decent income, you have a decent debt to income ratio, things like that, you can go to a Canadian bank like RBC Bank, and you could buy a home through them, which is what we did for our first property, our second, and our third property. We
Hmm.
used
RBC, yeah.
yeah, we used them and we went and it was clean, it was seamless. We already had RBC Canadian accounts and they pull your Canadian information, right? So
Yeah.
the very first thing, like it depends, like some people might say to me, they want a property, they want to put it in some type of entity, a corporation,
Yeah,
things
LLC or something like
yeah,
that.
and I say, "Okay, that's fine," and you could do that for, safety purposes or liability purposes, but you also have to realize if this is something that you're first starting out with, and it's like your first property and you're not big time or whatnot, all the money that you spend on creating that corporation, doing your taxes,
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
that good stuff, any of that cash flow that you just received, if you made 7,000, 10,000, you're gonna chop right into that by creating that entity. Now,
Hmm.
the argument is that, "Oh, well, liability and people sue." Well, you can get extra insurance for that, 1.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you're a good landlord and you make sure that your properties are, safe and you're doing what you're supposed to do, if someone steps outside of their shower and they slip and fall, but it has nothing to do with you and they're just, they got water on the floor, like that, they can't sue you and it come back to hurt you. But if
Hmm.
you have railings on your stairs and there's more than 3 steps and, they fall down the stairs or your electrical outlets or your fire safety, like those are the things that, yes, you have to be concerned with and you got to make sure that
Hmm.
it's up to date and up to code. But for the most part, if I tell someone who's just starting out and I'm like, hey, what options do you want to look at? If you're looking for one just to get started, go to a Canadian bank, get
I think
financing.
even TD can do it
And
because
TD can do
TD
it
is a
too. Yeah.
cross-border bank as
That's
well.
TD could do it. Bank of Montreal could do it as well, unlimited scope. But you can start there. And
I
then
love the RBC card. That was awesome
yes.
because it's like
Yeah.
I could transfer money from my Canadian account real easy, and it worked right at the Dunkin' Donuts,
Yeah.
and it's like I was down there because
Yeah.
RBC is the one that I was using, and yeah,
They're the number one.
get a bank, get a
Yeah.
mortgage, and they're always pumping it too. Like, hey, buy a
Yeah.
house in the States.
Yeah. If you go online, RBC Bank's website, they got
Hmm.
something for cross-border mortgages right now, guaranteed.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's one thing that I'll let them know. Then the other side of it is like if they're really serious and this is something they know they want to continue doing, then there's something called a DSCR loan, right? And a
hmm, hmm.
DSCR loan, as you know, and it's basically just the property qualifies you for the loan. They don't look at a person individually, right? So it's a
Yeah,
secondary lender. You're going to pay a point or two higher on your
hmm,
interest
hmm.
rate. However, you can go in and normally there are limits as far as how many mortgages you can get are much greater than what you can get with RBC Bank, right? RBC,
Yeah, that's usually how
right.
people buy a handful.
Yes, RBC's capped, I think, at about 4 right now,
Hmm.
but these lenders you can get 10 plus. So if we're looking to say, let's jump in and we're going to grab a whole bunch of property, go with the DSCR loan. You can get those, and we have those. So basically, what we do is now anybody that comes to us, we could say, here, we have lenders in New York State, we have lenders in Ohio, Michigan, wherever. And some of them are national, and we could say, hey, listen, if you're looking for that option, we can go through that process with you. We get the financing through the DSCR loan, and then we go from there.
Well, even, I did the quick numbers with the exchange rate on some of the cash flow that, we were seeing back in the day. This was 2019. So it wouldn't be too crazy to expect maybe you get $500 or $600 a door. Let's say you had
Correct.
four
Yeah.
and you're making like $2,400 a month American.
Yes.
Then you convert that back to pay your mortgage
Canadian.
back here in Canadian. That's $3,200 a month.
You got it.
So it's not it's not impossible that four is enough to break free from your living expenses at home.
Exactly. And that's what we try to say. Like, you don't necessarily right off the bat have to hit, the ball out of the park and get a home run every deal. But if you keep hitting those singles and those
Hmm.
singles keep producing you $500, $600 in cash flow, like that first house that I just said that we bought, way back, that
Yeah,
house every month gives us $526 USD every single month net after property taxes, mortgage,
yeah.
insurance, maintenance, vacancy, property management, you name it, all of it, 526 US. Do the conversion, you're at $750 a month Canadian. Now,
Hmm.
do that and you have four of them. Yeah, well, that's going to make it like, how does that make a big difference in someone's life? And when you really factor it in, now that property, I can't buy that still for 86 grand. But even if I can buy it now for 140 or 130, when you
Hmm.
still do the math and the numbers on it, and if you only have to put down 25% down, I mean, think about what 25% down is on the average price in Canada versus some of these markets that we're in. You could buy four or
Yeah.
five different homes for that same
Hmm.
amount of money. And if they're all cash flowing, you just got yourself a lot
Well,
closer.
it's like, let's say you're in Toronto and it's like, oh, I want to buy this like $890,000 house and
Yeah.
it's a 20% down because it's going to be a rental. So 178,000. And
Yeah.
there are places that you could probably, find a property for like maybe,
Yeah.
if you go down to Atlanta or something or all over the states, but
Yeah.
that's an all cash
Yeah.
178. Let's say it's 178 grand. You're all into this property. It's 100%, no mortgage. So you have no like,
Yeah.
you're not fighting with anyone. And you're probably gonna get,
So
I don't
exactly.
know, $1,700 a month.
So there you go. So that example you just said, right? That
One percenter,
176,
right?
that 178,000 you just said for a down payment on that 900,000 or $800,000 home. If you took that and you bought an all cash property where I am, that property there is going to make you $1,500 a month Canadian clean every
Yeah,
single month. Right?
yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, yes, you're gonna have potentially slower appreciation. You're not in a gigantic market with like the cyclical nature where it goes up and down and has those big swings. but they always continue to go up,
Yeah.
right? So no matter what, you're still going to get some appreciation, but it's the cash flow at the end of the day that most people are truly concerned about, because you still don't want all your equity trapped in a home. You want
Yeah.
to be able to get that cash flow.
Spread
Everybody,
it around,
yeah,
like if you're
especially
buying a bunch,
exactly.
150, 20%, 30 grand,
There you go.
178 over 30K. Could buy like 6 houses.
Bingo. Bingo.
6 for the price of one, like
Yeah.
pizza. So
Yeah.
the other thing too is it gives you an excuse to like get on a plane and go see your houses every once in a while and say, oh, I'm writing this
Yeah.
all off.
Yeah, well, you can write off the trip. Yes, I'm gonna be down in Philadelphia either at the end of this month or the beginning of next month. But it's, I'm gonna bring the family. We're gonna go drive down there, meet with some people, maybe look at some real estate. Um, yeah, it's just, you know what? There's something to be said about not physically being in the space where you own something. It's not always
Yeah,
present
it
on
prevents you
your
from going
mind.
and doing the hot water tank yourself.
Bingo, right? And then you're just not always like panicked about the property. Like you think, most people would think you are. It's the opposite. It's out of sight, out of mind, except for when you're collecting, your rent,
Or it
right?
doesn't come on in time. You're like, where's the rent?
Exactly. But other than that, like for the most part, like I like the fact that the real estate is somewhere else and it's not like just always present on my mind.
Yeah, you're
And
not
I think
driving
that,
past it, checking in on
yeah,
it. Oh, there's garbage piling
that's
up at the back again.
exactly. I think
Like
that's huge.
just
You
let
let
it
the
go, man.
people, yeah,
Let it go.
you let the people who are supposed to be doing that do that. Manage the
Yeah.
property, yeah, and it's just easier. It's cleaner that way. So, I think overall, for us, I think the biggest message is like letting Canadians, letting millennials know, like, hey, yeah, I understand I'm a millennial. I know how difficult it is for us to get like a personal residence, never mind a investment property. But
Yeah.
there's other options out there for you, and you just have to kind of open your mind up to what's out there, and do your research, and don't be scared. Like we took a risk, we took a jump, and so far it's been amazing. I've met a ton of people, and I mean, I hope for some big things in 2024 and 2025 as well.
Yeah, definitely. And if people want to reach out to you guys, they want to participate, they want you to help them navigate that, what should they do? How do they find you?
Yeah, so we have a website, beyondbordersgroup.com. So they can
Hmm.
go there, and then we have like a whole like invest section if they want to invest. That's there. And we have a contact us there. It's going to go directly to our email. So info@beyondbordersgroup.com. So that's there. And then they can find me on any social media platform. So Instagram is probably the easiest one. Dr. Chad at Beyond Borders, right? So that's where they'll find me there. And I started dabbling into some YouTube stuff, things like that. But it's so small right now. Like most of it is word of mouth and doing podcasts like your guys' show and just getting that message out and growing it, because we want to grow a community, right? Like, and let people know that, hey, there's alternatives, right? We're trying to change the narrative, and the growth doesn't necessarily stop at the U.S. market. Our hopes and plans for the future are to take it elsewhere. Whether it's the Caribbean, South America, wherever, right? Wherever there's opportunity. And I think that's all that it's about, is like, where is that opportunity for people and how can we present it, and who's interested in it, and really seeing it. Cause I think it's our demographic, it's our age group that's out there looking to try to make that next big jump. And
Hmm.
I think it's super important.
Yeah, as Canadian real estate becomes uninvestable for the average sub 40er.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I really appreciate you stopping by, and I'm a huge
definitely.
proponent of your mission statement and what you're out there doing. So, all the power to you. And yeah, I really appreciate you
Awesome.
stopping by.
Thanks, Bryce. I appreciate you for having me. And we'll talk soon.
No problem. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.